So we delay the giving of the degrees to the class of 2025 as long as we possibly can. And the time-honored tradition is for a person in my position to give some kind of final charge. It derives from a religious tradition of sermonizing, which rarely does any good, and people rarely remember what anybody said. So I'm going to do my best here to the class of 2025. I wish I had better news for you, but you don't need reminding that the world you're entering is unprecedented, particularly for those of you who live in the United States. So I can borrow the old cliches or use some new ones. So I'm going to give you 10 pieces of advice. The first is think and speak independently. Invent your own language and your own way of saying what you think, and don't borrow slogans, code words, cliches. My favorite terrible cliches are the way generations are talked about in the newspaper. Gen X, millennial. It's so pseudo-knowledge, like most of what you read online. So my advice is be skeptical, find your own words, your own rhetoric, and your own sound. Second piece of advice. So rely on evidence. Don't assume everything you hear about is true. So let me give you my favorite current example. So I'm going to take this from a page from Homer. So you remember the Trojan horse? You know what the Trojan horse was? Oh yeah, okay. So a Trojan priest of the name Laocoon tried to tell his people that this wasn't a gift from the Greeks. That's why beware Greeks bearing gifts. But it was actually a trap, and it would lead to the destruction of their city. So we are now facing a kind of Trojan horse argument in our own country. The President of the United States would like to tell you that his assault on higher education is to protect the Jews of America and to fight anti-Semitism. And as a Jew in the American community, I can think nothing more false and nefarious than that claim. He is doing exactly what princes, dukes, and kings did to Jews in the 18th century. And those that follow along are like court Jews. It feeds into the most nefarious of all conspiracy theories, that everything is controlled by the Jews. So, as a result, the demolition of Harvard and Columbia is whose fault? The Jews. So, interrogate the difference between false things and true things. The third thing I would say is don't simplify. Don't simplify. There are, like Occam's razor, there are various ideas of simplification, but some simplifications don't work. That things are complex and ambiguous. One simplification is all what you read about our politics. The America we face now is the result of 40 years of neglect of income inequality. Of allowing people to lose meaningful work, to let cities rot. And this was done by presidents long before Donald Trump. And we tolerated what is now an unbearable gap between the rich and the poor. So there is no doubt that you need to look at what is told to you by the media and on the internet with an idea that things aren't quite so simple. The fourth piece of advice is to listen. Listening is an art. Particularly, you should listen to the people who don't agree with you. You should listen to people who have different ideas. And from my point of view, you should listen to whatever music you like. Don't live without music. My fifth piece of advice is resist all forms of corrosive violence. Obviously, physical violence, hurting people, but shouting at people, humiliating people, hurling curses, epithets. Don't do it. There's no reason to. You will improve no one's life by doing it. And if you hate someone and you think someone is wrong, shouting at them will not improve the chances that you might be able to change their mind. My sixth piece of advice is don't give in to fear. Don't get into fear. Give in to the idea that you're in danger. Yes, I say this to all our students from countries not in the United States. And we will protect every student and every staff member who has some kind of vulnerability from the point of view of the ICE and immigration services of this country. The image of our government employees arresting a totally innocent individual off the street who was a student at Tufts is the most exact picture of what fascism and totalitarianism does. So I will tell you just a personal story from my parents' life. When my mother was pregnant with my older brother in 1941, her Swiss colleagues in the medical school, she was a professor in the medical school in Zurich, said to her, "How can you bring a Jewish child into this world only for that child to be killed?" And she said, "This is my only way of expressing the hope that we will escape the danger." And that child did, my older brother. No matter how bleak, and you heard it from the speakers here today, there is reason for hope. Resist fear, because fear leads to cowardice and to self-censorship. My seventh piece of advice is always keep a sense of irony. Don't overdo seriousness and smile how things don't always turn out the way they're supposed to. And don't be afraid of making mistakes. I have made more mistakes than not. The only way you can do something right is by making mistakes. I had a friend, I know nothing about this, but I had a friend who had a cartoon of Babe Ruth. You know who Babe Ruth was? Yeah, okay. And on the cartoon it said, Babe Ruth struck out 4,700 times. What do we remember him for? 60 home runs. My eighth piece of advice is don't give in to envy. Don't envy somebody else. It won't do you any good. You will not benefit. Now, you can emulate somebody. You can say, we musicians do it all the time. We look at somebody and say, they can do that. Holy, that's great. I'm going to learn how to do that because that impresses me. I don't envy the person because the envy of the person will not make me know how to do it. Emulate, don't envy. And because you went to college here, the ninth piece of advice is easy to follow. You will never and should never have an excuse to be bored. Boredom leads to envy, leads to violence and discrimination, to blaming other people for your life. So it's easy not to be bored. And I think, watching a lot of Netflix is boring. And it's doing something, making something, sing, write, dance, paint, take photographs, read. Not only a short book, but a big one. And you won't be bored. So value excellence. Go to an exhibit, some new art. Whatever you do, you have no reason to be bored. And my 10th and final piece of advice is remember your teachers. Remember their qualities and their care. Remember this college. And stay true to the link between education and democracy and freedom. With those 10 pieces of advice, I congratulate the class of 2025.